Welcome. We are being recorded. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marcella. I am Vice Chair of the Democratic Party of Bernalillo County. And this is our first session, lunch session for crime and context. And this topic is going to be courts and care. So with me today, I have Judge Bruce Fox from Bernalillo County District Court. And I have Dwi Rodriguez from the VA. And let me start with, Dwi is also my sister. Let me start with Judge Fox. Judge Bruce Fox was appointed by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham to his position as District Court Judge, Criminal Division in February 2021. He has lived in New Mexico and has been licensed to practice here since 1993. He received his BA from the University of Connecticut and his JD from Western New England University. Judge Fox spent his entire career working in the courts of New Mexico, the Navajo Nation, and the Pueblo of Laguna. Prior to being appointed to District Court, he was the Chief Judge for the Pueblo of Laguna for 8 years. He was also a New Mexico public defender for many years in the 2nd Judicial District Court here in Albuquerque, and spent the early part of his career as a legal aid attorney at DNA Legal Services on the Navajo Nation. Throughout his career, he has worked on developing a better understanding of addiction and behavioral health issues and their impact on the criminal justice system. He is a strong believer in drug courts and mental health courts, which give nonviolent offenders who want to change an opportunity to improve their lives. Thank you, Judge Fox, for being here. And now we have Dwi Rodriguez. And Dwi is a licensed clinical social worker with the VA Medical Center. Her official title is Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist. She works with veterans who are incarcerated or otherwise involved with the criminal justice system. She's also a member of the Community Veterans Court in Bernalillo County Metro Court. She also works with all the magistrates, district, and federal courts. She connects veterans with mental health and substance abuse services to address underlying issues impacting legal involvement. So welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here. Like I said, we're talking about mental health court and veterans court. So let me start with you, Judge Fox. Would you like to introduce yourself, say a few things?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see some people have some interest in this type of court process, veterans court and mental health court. I'm looking forward to the afternoon or to the session, and hopefully we'll get you some good information about what we all do here. And if you have any questions, we'll certainly, I'll stick around and answer any questions afterwards. Thanks.
Dwi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me here today. As Marcella mentioned, I'm a Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist. I'm a VA employee, though I work specifically with veterans who are involved in the criminal justice system, and I'm a member of the Veterans Treatment Court in Metro Court. Really excited to go over some of the successes and get a better understanding of veterans treatment courts. I know before I took this position, I did not even know that there was a veterans treatment court. I think mental health court, drug court, those are really commonly known, but the veterans treatment courts are gaining some ground and some popularity in the state. I may have to sort of duck out right at 12:30, but I will leave my email in the chat, and if there are any questions, you all can feel free to, that are veteran specific, you can feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So let me get started with you, Judge Fox. How does a person come into mental health court?
And I should say the district court and the metro court, district court, people only are in district court on felonies, and metro court is only misdemeanors. So in both cases, you get into mental health court if you're facing criminal charges. So felonies in district court, misdemeanors in metro court. And mental health court is kind of unique because if somebody is, so it does require somebody to have a criminal charge and to have a diagnosed mental illness. If the mental illness is so severe that they are what's called not competent to stand trial, then there's a separate process for how that person is addressed in the criminal justice system. So basically, this court is set up just to handle people with a severe mental illness who could use the help and who are facing criminal charges. And the whole point is to, we also look for a connection between the mental illness and the nature of the criminal charge. So how a person gets into it is typically through the attorneys. And if they believe that if the mental illness is addressed, there would be less criminal activity, then that's kind of overall generally how a referral process starts.
Wonderful. And Joy Lee, how would one come into Veterans Court?
So very similarly, with the exception is that they've been identified as a veteran. So we're looking for an identified service member. So they can't, we have active duty. We have those that are still in the military and those that are veteran status. We also take National Guard. So veteran is sort of this broad term to describe any sort of active or previous service member, including reserves and Guard. So they have some type of charge. They're going through the Metro system. They are, and I'll speak to Metro primarily since Judge Fox will speak to district. Metros, they're seeing a pretrial service officer, they've identified as a veteran, and they have a treatment need. So they have these criminal charges and a treatment need, whether it be substance use, domestic violence, any sort of related offense that would require a treatment, a behavioral health treatment or a mental health treatment. Then they would be referred and then sent to be screened for veterans courts by one of our program managers.
Oh, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Joy Lee, what about somebody with a less than honorable discharge, a veteran?
So we'll still take them in veterans court. They wouldn't be eligible for VA medical services though. So they wouldn't be necessarily working with me. The community veterans court in Metro, they have grant money. So they have an actual community provider. They use First Nations. So for someone that is a veteran, but has a under honorable, less than honorable, dishonorable discharge where they're not able to access the VA medical center, they still have options for treatment and can still do veterans court. What we're really looking for is someone that is interested in the military culture, because there is a strong emphasis on military culture within the veterans court. So if someone was in the military, but they don't identify with that side of them, they don't identify with the military, with the people, they're probably not going to be the best fit for the program, although they may meet, criteria being a veteran.
Oh, and I could give you an update as to district court. District court we actually have a veterans court team put together, and another judge, Judge Courtney Weeks, and myself are basically refurbishing, redoing the whole nature of the program right now. It was up and operating for many years. Right now we have a couple of participants, but we're going through the process of an approval process to approve our planned structure. So hopefully that'll be happening in the next couple of months, but that's the status right now of district court.
Wonderful, thank you. So what are the most frequent charges against those that appear in mental health court and followed by veterans court?
Well, on the felony side, typically it's going to be lower level felonies. So in New Mexico, the first degree felonies are the most severe types of felonies, the murders and rapes and that kind of nature of charge. The third and fourth degree felonies are usually drug offenses, so batteries, simple batteries, sometimes gun charges. But generally, people aren't going to be eligible if it's a serious violent crime or a sex offense. That's wouldn't be admitted into the program. It's kind of tied to what kind of services the person needs and what's available. We found that typically that the people who need help are usually the ones, when you think of somebody who's like housing unstable, where what kind of charges come up. If it's just trespassing or a simple battery, it'll end up in Metro Court. If they happen to have methamphetamine or heroin on them, then it would be a felony and in District Court. But we get a lot of people that have difficulty with their housing, aren't leading a particularly stable life, and that's where so you have these lower level felonies, unstable living situation, which also typically involves not having regular medical care, and that's kind of the combination of factors that goes into how a person gets on the radar being referred into mental health court. And actually, it's similar to Veterans Court.
So it is very similar. We don't take some of the screening criteria is they can't have. Well, so Metro will occasionally take felony offenses if they're going to screen them, or if they're going to be pled down to a misdemeanor, but that's at the judge's discretion or the presiding veterans judge discretion. If they have a long history of felony convictions, that's also something that requires a higher level of assessment and interviewing, because you want to see if this person's truly going to benefit from a treatment court or if they would be better suited in another avenue. Sex offenses, we don't take. Violent crimes like murder, we don't take. Crimes against children, we don't take. The most common one that we're seeing, and that it's always pretty prevalent, I think it's prevalent in New Mexico, is the DWI offenses. So we'll have DWI first offenses or multiple offenses. There are domestic violence, the battery, the simple assault type of charges, but DWI has primarily been the most frequent one, and I think that makes sense with New Mexico, just sort of statistics in terms of what kind of cases they're seeing.
Thank you. And so what kind of program or type of programs what is a common program to offer or require of clients in mental health court and then veterans court?
And I guess maybe I should give people a little idea of what the heck we're talking about when we're talking about mental health court or veterans court. This whole idea of both of them all started with drug court. That was the original one. It started in Dade County in Miami in the late 80s. And the idea was to, if you address somebody with a drug addiction who's committing crimes, if you address the addiction, that person will no longer commit crimes, and that's the idea of get them well. And the way to do that, and this is all the programs, mental health court, veterans court, drug court, there are best practices, national best practices, and we all try to follow those. And the programs are set up similarly to be typically a minimal of a year and sometimes up to 2 years. Seeing a judge on a regular basis, setting up some kind of treatment plan, seeing counselors. With mental health court, there's the involvement of caseworkers, so you're addressing some of the underlying, making sure medical appointments are met and prescriptions are filled and prescriptions are taken as needed. When people with more substance abuse issues, it would be geared towards counseling. But the idea is to, first is there's court oversight. Unlike most cases that you think of, you go to court and you see the judge for 20 minutes or whatever, and then you're put on probation and you don't see the judge again. And with these type of programs, you see a judge, they have court a minimal of every 2 weeks and sometimes once a week. So over a year, you're going to see a judge, you're going to see the rest of the team once a week or once every 2 weeks, and basically a support team. So that's kind of what the structure is, and so the programs are geared generally around either a single diagnosis, either addiction or a mental health issue, or what they call dual diagnosis, somebody with both. But that's kind of mental health court. And I don't know if there's anything, Joy Lee, that you have on Veterans Court.
That's pretty similarly to how they all run, and you hit the nail on the head when you said that it started as a drug court model, and that we're all basically following a drug court model. We just have a few slight adjustments. But that, I love how you mentioned that the judge has so much influence, because that is a big factor. That, you know, our veterans, depending on which track they are, and ours are misdemeanor charges, so there's a 6-month or a 12-month track. They're seeing the judge every other week. We have court twice a month. So for someone that's in the program for 12 months, they're seeing the judge twice a month. Someone that, you know, has less risk, less needs, they're seeing the judge 3 times throughout their court program. But they have constant contact with their probation officer. They have the randomized urine drug screens to help support their sobriety, recovery, and then there's treatment requirements that they have to meet. We also have a large team, all coming from different lenses, to include probation, myself with BJO, their community provider, a case manager from Metro Court, and then of course our judge, and then attorneys. So we want everyone's opinion. We want a prosecutor and a public defender on our team as well.
And before we start a program, that's typically you get the team together and the commitment from the team, and make sure it's a good, diverse group from the justice system. I've worked, as I mentioned, I worked in Laguna for a while, and they had a similar type of program. You can also have police. We've had police officers on the team,
Right.
some community members. So it's kind of broad, but those basics: judge, prosecutor, public defender, probation, counselors, those are kind of the core group that make up the team, and will be supporting the person throughout the program.
That's incredible. So following up, so would you consider the purpose of the program to divert clients from the criminal justice system, or are they already in it? So it's just, is the purpose to hopefully stop recidivism, or is it just basically for the charge that they are currently facing? What is the purpose?
Yeah, that's a good, for when you say divert, that's typically people refer to it as a diversion program. Diverting from the regular criminal justice system of either conviction, going to probation, going to prison, instead going through a counseling program. And the point that we're trying to do a lot of things. Of course, for the community's purpose, the less people committing crimes, especially the low-level crimes, the more focus our limited justice resources can stay pointed at the serious crimes. So it's getting people, that recidivism rate, typically we have, by the time somebody gets referred into the program, they have quite a number of charges over the years. So the goal is you get through the program and you will have less law enforcement contact. But there is a social side to it too, and what I call the ripple effect, that you have one middle-aged adult who is capable of being employed, who then gets a job, then supports their family, they're watching their own kids. And likewise, if you have one addict in a family, they can drag 20 or 30 people down with them. You end up with grandparents watching the kids, kids who don't have a parent in their life. You have somebody who's not working, not supporting a family. And so there is there's a really positive social side to it, aside from just the criminal justice part.
And, I would have the same response. I will respond to the panelists' question about how do we handle non-compliance, if that's okay. And I think that each court handles it a little differently, but the main difference from what I've, can see within treatment courts is our goal is is not to punish a behavior. Our goal is to look at the function of that behavior. So the person that's in the treatment court that is on their third DWI, and now they're finally doing treatment court, they're in treatment, but they're, a couple weeks in, relapse is pretty common. So we're not going to throw them in jail. We do have a tiered system just to make it systematic and make it fair and equitable, and gives us at least a guiding system so that we're not just making decisions like, well, because as we all know, decisions can be impacted by our moods, the time of day, what other cases have been seen. So there is a system. However, the focus is really on, okay, what piece of treatment are we missing? Like, that is the beauty of a treatment court, is that we're looking at this person as more as the person that's on their third DWI that just can't seem to get sober and now relapsed again. Traditional probation, they might be going to jail. They might, be on house arrest or, all these other things. In a treatment court, the jail is like the last thing. Like, we've tried everything else and you need a natural consequence, and jail is your natural consequence. But we're trying other things first. We're trying community service. One unique aspect of veterans court that is not in all the other treatment courts is we have peer mentors. So we have actual veteran peers that have been through treatment courts. They've been sober. I think the requirement is either 1 to 2 years post completion of a treatment court, and they serve as mentors to our active participants in the treatment court. So the non-compliance definitely has much more of, I think, a supportive, like, wraparound approach versus like, you did this, now this is the logical consequence that I think happens in traditional court.
And also on the reverse side, I should say, what the phrase they use in these programs is sanctions and incentives. And so the sanctions, the team talks about it extensively, about how we're going to respond, and exactly what Joy Lee was talking about trying, and we look at how engaged they are, and when we decide what should happen, how the team's going to respond. But in sanctions can be, we try to avoid jail. That can be anything from being able to leave court early one day, to getting bus tickets or gift cards. Just the audience at the court clapping for everyone can be an incentive. And sanctions can be, it's limitless, how we can have people write an essay, we can put them on house arrest for a couple of weeks. There's a lot of alternatives. It just takes thinking it out and thinking outside of the box of just saying, if you violate the rules, you have to go to jail. That kind of thinking. It's really pushing towards engagement in the counseling program and trying to achieve that long-term goals.
So let me jump to Joy Lee for this question. So how successful is your program? I mean, overall.
I wish that I had the actual statistics with me. So my response will be very much anecdotal. But yes, I mean, we are a successful program. The team really comes together. If a veteran is struggling, we want to know why. We want to try every last thing before we're moving to something like termination. We will have a couple people that come into treatment court more than once, and that's okay. I've been a treatment provider at the VA. I've worked in residential. Every time you go into treatment, every time you do these things, you hear something a little differently, and that's okay. That is part of life. That is part of recovery from true addiction, is that it's a fluid process. But in terms of like measuring success by people's engagement, people's appreciation, their community, building social connections, and of course their completion of the legal process and the actual treatment court, I'd say it's very successful. I've been doing this, I think about, 5 years in this role, and I've probably seen 3 people that have been terminated, none that have voluntarily dropped out. So I'd say it's very good.
So it's not, addiction is addiction. It's really very challenging. These programs are not perfect by any means. It's basically gives people opportunities. It doesn't cure addiction. And there's lots of addicts out there who will tell you, alcoholics, they can not have a drink for 10 years and they have one beer and they are back in full out. So it happens, and the numbers would be kind of, they do have some national numbers on drug courts, and it's something like 60% recidivism without drug court, meaning likelihood of committing more crimes, and it drops down to 40% or so with drug court. But that's straight out just addictions. And so with mental health court and veterans court, it's a little bit different, because we're also do a lot of times with veterans court, there's the dual diagnosis, and with mental health court, it's just the mental health issues. But overall, it's people, it's a program that the success stories are amazing, but it's not perfect. I mean, there are people that have gone through successfully. All these programs kind of have a phase system, typically 4 phases. You get through your 4 phases and then graduate. There's people that have gotten through and graduated, and 3-4 years down the road, they fall off the wagon and they're back in again. That happens too. But again, the success stories, there's a lot of them, and they're amazing. That's why it's worth it.
Absolutely. And I'll have one final question for you, Dwi, because I know you have to leave a little bit earlier. So what other suggestions or solutions to the problem of reducing the number of persons with severe mental illness or traumatic conditions on the street? So would you say that's a root cause? I mean, homelessness.
Yeah, I think that homelessness has been a big target of the VA for a few years now. We've set a goal to reduce and end veteran homelessness. When you're homeless, your set of needs and it's different. And a lot of crimes, and these low-level crimes, can be reduced to substance use, addiction. There's no other means for me to get this rather than to steal. So I think that access to care is coming out of MDC, because you get them there on the streets, they get arrested, they go in, and then they are just dropped right back off to where they started. MDC is doing a lot of work with the Reintegration Center, trying to connect them. I know that I get calls from case managers, emails, this person's getting released, can you get a hold of them? COVID has made it a little challenging, because homeless people generally don't have Wi-Fi or cell phones or internet access. But the VA does, for eligible veterans, we do have like free cell phones. So for veteran specific population, I think just continuing to push access to care, the quicker services when someone is arrested. I mean, it's hard, I think, to predict and to lower the trend. But when someone is in the system, being able to access care as quickly as possible. And I will drop my email in the chat. I appreciate, though, you having me, and appreciate you being here.
No, and nice meeting you, Joy Lee. I appreciate, because part of what all of this is about, what really works is collaboration. So when Joy Lee, what she's talking about, MDC working with her, or working with the courts, county services getting involved. I mean, it really helps when we all collaborate. And just that little part that Joy Lee left with, of saying a discharge plan from the jail, from MDC, it's so beneficial to actually have someplace other than getting dropped off in the middle of downtown in the middle of the night. So anyway, I won't keep you any longer. Thanks for your.
Thank you. Let me see if I know how to do a chat. I think I do. Okay.
Thanks, Dwi. Yep, we got it.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thanks. Love you.
Bye.
Yes, that is my little sister. So let me follow up with you. And I don't know if I asked you, Judge Fox, but so who refers an individual to mental health court? Like, is it the public defender? I mean, or is it a private? I mean, who makes that referral to mental health court?
Typically, it's a combination of things, but it usually starts with the attorneys. They're the ones and a lot of times the public defender, who is the one that's very familiar with they've met with their client and kind of get an idea of what they're going through. We all are familiar with people's records. So if somebody has, this is their 5th possession of methamphetamine case in the last 3 years, we'd all know that looks like there may be a problem, and we a lot of times I'll bring it up as a judge to say, are there some alternatives that are being looked at when I do meet with the attorneys. But it is usually starts with the attorneys. It's a little complicated because, of course, judges and attorneys are not clinicians. We typically don't have any kind of degree on what kind of counseling is beneficial to someone. But so usually it starts on the radar of those attorneys and the judge, and then there's a referral process, and then whichever appropriate team, Veterans Court or Mental Health Court, would then screen the person to see whether the program is appropriate for them clinically, whether they'll get any kind of therapeutic benefit from the program.
Okay. And so would you say that there's a pretty cohesive unit within, the public defender's office, the district attorney's office, the courts? Because did you say that the DA's office is usually part of the team? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, almost always. The big one of the big things is making sure there's enough outreach in the different programs. We've never had a problem having an individual public defender, an individual ADA, assistant district attorney, participate in our programs. It's a matter of getting the rest of the attorneys on board to do the referral process. Because it is, it's what can be referred to as an intensive outpatient treatment program. It's not easy to go through this, and so there, if a public defender, for example, is looking and talking to their client about what their charge is and what the consequences is, and what they'd like to see happen. Getting a conviction and reporting to a probation officer once a month for a year, they may decide that's what they'd rather do than go through, as I said, this intensive outpatient treatment program. But kind of answer your question, that's kind of what is it. One thing is to just make sure that the attorneys are aware that the programs are here, and that's usually done by outreach and making sure that somebody from each of the offices is on the team.
And so I should ask you, can you suggest other solutions to the problem of reducing the number of persons with severe mental illness, substance abuse, traumatic conditions on the street?
I think it just takes collaboration. The state just in the last couple of years passed a outpatient treatment program that's also geared towards that, and that's more geared towards just people voluntarily going through the process instead of actually having criminal charges pending. It's a matter of because that is what I've been talking about all day today, is people with criminal charges pending. Well, what about everyone else out there who needs services? And yes, it's a matter of doing what we can. I know the county and the city both have basically task force looking at overall crime issues, but it's a matter of making sure services are available where it's needed, and that's a big one. Yeah, we got to just communicate with each other so we all know what services are out there.
Yes. Okay. And so what should law enforcement priorities be to protect the general public while also respecting the rights and problems of clients in mental health court, or veterans court?
I think there's a balance, and kind of reminds me of this phrase defund the police, which is really disappointing that got out there, that got the political issue of one side or the other, when the majority of people did not favor, a vast majority don't want any of that phrase, anything to do with that, saying defund the police. It's more about getting more services for the police to actually have resources for your police officers to address, so that when they come across somebody who's mentally ill, they better know how to respond and how to assist the person, which would take either their training or have somebody available to call out to the scene. So, you know, I think the police need more resources in that, but it's more diverse resources, so that it's not just addressing straightforward criminal activity, but also taking steps to address some of the severe mental illness or drug addiction, and not necessarily solving it, but more pointing people in the right direction.
Yeah, agreed. And so thank you. This has been great. I don't see any other questions from the audience. Is there anything you want to talk about before I ask you about your current, are you up for retention, or are you running in 2020?
Oh yeah, 2022. That I'm going to be running in 2022, and but that's quite a long ways away. I guess time flies pretty fast though, but I'll be there. Oh, I see. There is. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, any broad-based. I could go over it. I should say we've only talked about mental health and Veterans Court today, and then talked about drug court. As I said, the drug court model, that's where it all started. And so both Metro and District Court have drug courts as well. They also have a young adult court. This is for really focused on young people who don't have extensive criminal records. While there's some young people can get fairly deep into addiction, usually they don't have the severe addiction problems as some of the others. And it's really just trying to get young people in the right direction through kind of a team support scenario as well. The same idea, go through about a year, get the support, get a team support, get a judge or two as support. So they have that. The Metro started the homeless court specifically to address homeless issues. It's fairly complicated. That's a little bit outside of the drug court model. It's basically trying to avoid people being in the criminal justice system at all, and really focusing on a collaboration between available support services. And District Court also has a DWI court, and that's for people, again, with felonies. So this is a fourth offense or more. It's not going to be your really hardcore DUI 10 plus who are looking at mandatory lengthy prison terms. But for your fourth or fifth offense, that's looking at a mandatory 6 months or 1 year, 18 months. The benefit of going through the program, you wouldn't erase the conviction, but you would be able to serve the conviction on an ankle bracelet, the mandatory time. So we're really taking off, really trying to address those level issues. And what I said at the beginning is really applicable, that, if we can get some of these issues solved, these low level criminal issues, we leave them, allows more resources that we do have to focus on the serious crimes.
Addressing the root causes, right? Substance abuse, mental health, that kind of perpetuates crime. So we do have a question. Is drug treatment need a growing problem? Are there more addicts these days because of opioids or meth, or has it been consistent over the years at the mental health court?
I think COVID, I've heard some stories. I haven't seen hard numbers, but it was not good. That people turn to alcohol and drugs a little heavier than before, and that's basically almost having nothing else to do and not having available services, or you can imagine. I mean, I recall doing this last summer, meeting with a doctor by Zoom and just thinking this is not effective. And so it's just not the same. And so you have limited services available. Those services are being done by Zoom. So I believe the numbers, they're still looking at the numbers of what has happened in the last year. But I believe nationally addiction issues have gone up. Overall, meth has been here. One of the real frightening things about meth now is the actual quality of the drug coming into the streets. Is that it's basically such high quality that it's more addictive. And then fentanyl is just a disaster. And that has basically taken off in the last 5 years or so. And fentanyl, there's large quantities are being produced. They're basically using low levels of fentanyl, creating them to look like OxyContin pills. And yeah, I mean, that is increased. You have to really look hard at the Albuquerque community. Has it gotten worse here in Albuquerque? Likely. I don't think it's gotten dramatically worse over the last year, but definitely I could see that it's consistent with the national levels, that it's gotten a little worse in particular the last year because of COVID.
Agreed. And I think you're right. I don't have exact numbers, but definitely a trend nationally. Do you find that there are enough providers? I mean, for as far as behavioral health, let's just start there. Have you found that there are enough providers within the Albuquerque metro area?
It's really hard to say. The people that are interested and are engaged in our programs, we do have access to enough services. The overall community, it goes back to this about housing instability, transportation instability. Is it somebody who doesn't want the services or just doesn't want to get them or doesn't think that they're available? I think it's likely we don't have enough services. It's a pretty severe problem about people not having enough particular behavior health services available, but it is a really tough issue to overall put your finger on because there's such a variety of different people who have a variety of different levels of care needs.
And so when you're talking to the defendant, to these clients, is there a common theme with their stories?
Yeah, a lot of them have started, a lot of the addiction issues in particular, they start young. I've seen even people having their first access to drugs or alcohol in elementary school. And so it's been a part of their lives for a long time. A lot of them kind of hit rock bottom, that they just get sick of it, and they talk about the feeling of being trapped, feeling that you can't get your way out. Mental illness is fairly complicated because a lot of mental illnesses are not you don't even see symptoms until somebody's in their 20s. So and there's such a wide range of mental illness and different degrees, and sometimes medication works and sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on the person. So that one's a little tougher to talk about consistent stories. But it is, again, what we're looking at is the criminal element, and usually that means somebody's in some kind of distress when they're in our programs. They are some reason committing crimes, and usually there is overall some kind of anxiety or distress in their income, housing, transportation, job. And so that generally overlaps.
And have you noticed that if there's a correlation between more familial support or outside support in place for the client and their success in the program, or is it?
It's always good. And sometimes it takes just a little breathing room. A lot of the family support for drug addicts, both drug addicts and mental illness, a lot of them have kind of burned bridges, that the families are kind of sick of it, that the families for mental illness, either somebody's not taking meds like they're supposed to, not going to doctor's appointments, and the family knows that they could be more stable, and they're tired of trying to just deal with it year after year. And addiction, it's so complicated, so difficult on parents in particular to know, should you give them a helping hand when they're begging you for $40 or something? Should you give it to them or just say no? Should you give them a place to sleep for the weekend? But a lot of times there is some issue with that. On the other hand, a lot of times if they can get into a program, show the family they're sober or getting on a treatment track for mental illness, 3-4 months in, if they show a track record, a lot of times those family relationship will begin to heal again, and then we can get the support back in place.
Makes sense.
Right.
And let's end with a nice question. What is your favorite part of your job?
Well, that is as a district court judge, and I should just say these what they call specialty courts. For your normal case, I see somebody and there's a verdict or a plea. Somebody's found guilty, and then I sentence them. I might see them again if there's a probation violation, but typically not. And with this program, it's so rewarding to follow somebody through and to see an actual change. Somebody who was homeless, drug addict, or somebody who's homeless, mentally ill, get back on track, and after a year, they're working or have a stable home. That you see it in their personality, you see it in their physical appearance. They just look clean and healthy, and to have that, be able to see that as a judge is really rewarding.
Yeah, I bet. So I don't think there are any more questions from the audience. Do you want to add anything?
I didn't talk about the financial end of all of this. When all these specialty courts, one of the benefits, of course, is that when you talk about housing somebody at a jail at $50,000 a year versus spending $2,500 a year on a treatment court, there's that cost end to it that a lot of people don't see. But that's overall really helps the overall system. It's just really takes a lot. I think that overall the courts are, the reason they've taken off from drug court and spread out to all these different specialty courts is that basically they work, that they really help the system. Even though it doesn't seem like it, I think if we can help these people with the lower level crimes, we can all focus on reducing the violent crime. That's the real concern right now. But we all try to do what we can for all other aspects of the criminal justice system, and this is one of them. So can't think of anything else to add at this point. But thank you for having me this afternoon, and thank you to the audience for listening for an hour.
Yes, thank you, Judge Fox, and it was so nice talking to you and seeing you around at county party activities, and thank you.
Yeah, I won't, once the election's done, the judges, I have to run an election. That's part of the statute. It doesn't look right, doesn't feel right for a judge to do that, but that's part of our system. But after we go through the election, then judges absolutely have to stay neutral. So, but there's absolutely no problem showing up at something I never heard the word Democrat or Republican until just now. You know, these are all programs that just help the community overall anyway. So I think it's great to give me this opportunity to educate a few people about what goes on in this building.
Yeah, no, this is great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And everybody have a good afternoon.
Bye.
All right. Bye.